Hey guys, my name's Elizabeth Grant, and I chose to do my digital resource project over the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So what is the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, or otherwise known as the Rehab Act? It prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in programs conducted by federal agencies, in programs receiving federal financial assistance, in federal employment, and in the employment practices of federal contractors. It protects qualified individuals with disabilities. An individual with a disability is a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, has a record of such impairment, or is regarded as having such an impairment. Qualified means the person satisfies the job-related requirements of the position he or she holds or is applying for and can perform its essential functions with or without a reasonable accommodation. So who does this act apply to? The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 applies to all K-12 public schools and most private schools and colleges, so long as they receive federal funding, which most do. It also applies to federal programs that offers jobs and employments to individuals with disabilities. So the next couple slides are going to be a few sections from the Rehab Act and their importance into the actual act itself. So Section 501 of the Rehab Act prohibits employment discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities in the federal sectors, including the U.S. Postal Service, the Postal Regulatory Commission, and the Smithsonian Institution. So in 2016, they proposed some new rulemaking on the section, which consolidated existing requirements from a variety of sources. It set goals for federal agency workforces of 12% representation for individuals with disabilities. And then it set goals for federal agency workforces of 2% representation for individuals with targeted disabilities. Section 503 of the Rehab Act prohibits employers with federal contracts or subcontracts from discriminating against applicants and employees with disabilities. It requires affirmative steps to hire, retain, and promote qualified individuals with disabilities. The non-discrimination provisions apply to all companies with contracts in excess of $10,000. The affirmative action provision applies to companies with 50 or more employees and contracts of 50,000 or more. So in 2014, they updated this section to strengthen its affirmative action requirements and for the first time to create a 7% representation goal. They also required that employers must invite applicants and employees to self-identify as people with disabilities. So Section 504 of the Rehab Act. Section 504 provides no otherwise qualified individual with a disability in the United States shall solely by reason of her or his disability be excluded from the participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So this section prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities by any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance or by any program or activity conducted by a federal executive agency or the U.S. Postal Service. For programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance, there is no minimum threshold for coverage. There's also no requirement that recipients or executive agencies have a certain number of employees. So this section protects qualified individuals with disabilities who apply to and participate in such programs. It also protects job applicants and employees of the organization that provide them. Section 508 of the Rehab Act addresses information technology. It requires federal agencies' information and communications technology to be accessible to people with disabilities. It only applies to federal agencies, but many private employers have adapted its standards as a way to ensure their technology infrastructure is accessible. So they also offer a resource that provides a wealth of guidance for employers to be able to think accessible when it comes to technology. This resource is called the Partnership on Employment and Accessible Technology. It includes a guide for employers, an online tool, and human resource professionals to help ensure that their online job applications and other e-recruiting technologies are accessible to job seekers with disabilities. So I think that the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is super important because it broke way for the disability rights movement. This act was actually the first major legislative effort to secure an equal playing field for individuals with disabilities. It led to increased rules and procedures for an equal and quality education for these individuals. My call to action is that we as a community must ensure and enforce these rights to our individuals with disabilities in order to create a more equitable environment and future. Thanks, guys, for watching. And then here are my resources I used.